All right. What's happening, Facemask fam? Last Thursday in February? Yeah. This month is so short. After that, after Tuesday, we get our first month without any NFL games. So the wait is underway. But that doesn't mean we're going anywhere. Plenty of offseason stuff still to talk about, as always. Actually, before I keep going, let me just double check my levels because it wasn't too long ago that I was having audio issues. Hopefully that's not the... Well, what's going on, everybody? Figure we switch up the topic slightly, not so much, but it's been primarily Dynasty coverage thus far as not just videos but live streams, which will of course continue with it being the off season. But instead of the incoming rookie class, figured today could be a discussion about the 2023 free agents, at least the prominent names of the 2023 free agent class. So, just running through them as far as they pertain to fantasy, of course. So, names like, I'm not going to spend too much time unless it's actually asked about defensive players, the top defensive free agents. You got Javon Hargrave as somebody who's been talked about as far as just overall free agent circles, but from a fantasy perspective, I mean, you could talk about it in that it would hurt if he leaves. It hurts the Eagles' interior depth, a position that they like to be deep in, and would then subsequently hurt the Eagles' defense for fantasy purposes. But that's about the extent of that, and that just pertains primarily. I mean, I guess some dynasty leagues do include team defenses. So, yeah, the Eagles lose a little bit there. But it's primarily offense. I know that we do have a few people that follow this channel that play IDP or that play defense in Dynasty, but for the most part, it's offense related, So we can talk about that today. So I figured we'd lead off with like some of the larger names and just kind of trickle our way down, maybe in like subsequent streams. Just to fill the gap of the off season, and go from there. So to kick things off, because there's no reason to do anything other than just dive right in at this point. I didn't put him in the graphic. I didn't put him in the thumb, but the top free agent this year is Lamar Jackson. And you see a lot of different bold takes that he is going to walk and that he could end up. There are people that think he can end up in Atlanta. There are people that think he can end up somewhere in like Minnesota. The way I see it is the worst case scenario for the Ravens here. The worst case scenario is they slap him with the franchise tag and trade him at the draft. That's the worst case scenario here for the Baltimore Ravens. I think the most likely scenario is he just returns to Baltimore. Now, they as a franchise, I think, have some work to do as far as convincing Jackson why he should want to stay long term. You just look around the NFL and the transactions that have happened over the past couple of years. Teams with young quarterbacks on rookie deals didn't trade away weapons like a Marquise Brown. They looked to acquire them. The Cardinals did it with DeAndre Hopkins. The Bills did it with Stephon Diggs. The Eagles just did it with A.J. Brown. The Dolphins did it with Tyreek Hill. Like, I think Lamar is probably looking to the team to do something similar to get him some help. So that's probably something that they need to work out, right? That's something that the team and Jackson, they need to come. There needs to be some level of understanding there between front office and player that the team is going to give him the best opportunity to succeed if he does, in fact, return to Baltimore, which I think is going to be the most likely scenario. So I think Jackson returns. Again, some people's bold takes are that Lamar walks. I guess the bold take from where I'm sitting is Lamar resigns and the Ravens put their money where their mouth is and acquire a wide receiver for Lamar Jackson. And that's something they need to look to do anyway. Rashad Bateman is interesting. He's certainly got a lot of talent, but he missed not the entire season, but he went down after week 6 or 7, missed the rest of the season with, I think it was a foot injury, right? It was a foot injury that ended up. I think he suffered it like week 2 or 3, and then it was lingering through weeks 4, 5, and 6, and then around like week 7, Bateman ended up having season-ending surgery. So that's now two seasons, his rookie year and his sophomore year, where Bateman missed a decent chunk of time. Because remember, as a rookie, he suffered core muscle surgery or a core muscle injury in training camp, had surgery, and then missed the beginning of the season. So they need him to stay on the field. And then after that, it's Devin Duvernay, James Prochet. I don't know that they bring Deshaun Jackson back. Of course, they have Mark Andrews. But Mark Andrews didn't have the season that many expected him to have. Jackson missing time probably factored into that. But he didn't have the year that he had. And it might have helped if there was a reliable, consistent threat on the outside in the form of another wide receiver to help take the pressure off of Mark Andrews. Once Bateman went down, that went away. His opportunities probably diminished significantly because teams could just key on him because nobody else was a consistent threat. So the Ravens need to get that done in the form of upgrading the wide receiver position in conjunction with retaining Lamar Jackson. And I think they do both. So Jackson is the prize of the free agent class. And I think he returns to Baltimore. Now, there is another quarterback in, Derek Carr. Derek Carr is the one who's obviously on the move because he's a free agent as a result of his of the team releasing him. So Carr will 100. Whereas Jackson can still return to Baltimore, Carr will be playing for a different team in 2023. That is a foregone conclusion. The favorites appear to be the Saints and the Jets. The Panthers are sort of making some noise in those the sweepstakes, if you want to call them that. But it seems like it's between the Saints and the Jets. Now, the Jets have also been linked to Aaron Rodgers, whereas I haven't seen Rodgers linked to the Saints. I've only seen Rodgers linked to the and I've seen Rodgers linked to the Raiders as well, Derek Carr's old team. So there you go. But of course, this would be in the form of that's different. That would be in the form of a trade that we don't even know if the Packers actually want to do. So anyway, Carr's chances, right? And so to that point, the Jets would be able to acquire Carr with just dollars. But of course, Aaron Rodgers presents a much more enticing option at quarterback than Derek Carr does. No offense to Derek Carr. Yeah. Carr's best chances to win, it honestly might be the Jets. The Saints present an opportunity from the perspective of their team is also ready-made, but the excuse me. The Saints present an opportunity from the perspective of they have the easiest path to a division title. Tom Brady's gone. Tampa probably needs to hit the reset button. Whether they do or don't remains to be seen. But Tampa probably needs to hit the reset button with Tom Brady not coming back. They only won the division with an 8-9 record anyway, so it's not like Tom Brady was put at this point. Even though Brady played well, the team wasn't able to prove that the roster is still worthy of competing this year without Brady. So there's that in Tampa. Atlanta is still rebuilding or working their way towards some kind of relevance, and so are the Panthers. So the Saints present the clearest path to a division title, but the Jets offer a much more enticing offense for Carr. Like New Orleans has Alvin Kamara, who didn't have a great season last year, is starting to get a little bit older and has a pending legal situation that could result in the form of a suspension in 2023. And I think at this point, a lot of people are thinking it's likely. You have Michael Thomas, who did come back to the field to start the season last year after missing all of 2021 due to an injury. But his play was not as effective, and then he ended up missing the rest of the season halfway through anyway. So you don't even know if you're going to get anything moving forward at this point from Michael Thomas. Now, they do have Chris Olave. That's the positive here. They have an electric player who's probably going to be a top 15 receiver as far as ADP in 2023 redraft. Olave looks excellent. Rashid Shaheed looks like he can play a little bit, right? Rashid Shaheed looks like he's pretty good at football. So there are some interesting young players for New Orleans, but I think where the Jets have the advantage here. Because not only do they have Garrett Wilson, who is on par with Chris Olave as far as an electric young rookie, but they have you may have to wait to open this season with Breece Hall, but he's a significantly more enticing long-term play at the running back position than Alvin Kamara. It could be slow for him working his way back this year, but it's not like Derek Carr is 37 and only has like one more opportunity to potentially compete. He's 32. He'll be 32 when the season begins. So he's not a spring chicken, and obviously he's not, he's an above average quarterback. I don't know that he's capable of being the quarterback on a championship contender, but you eventually get Breece Hall back. You have Garrett Wilson. You assume Elijah Moore eventually takes a step forward, because I think a lot of his problems could have been attributed to some of it was on him, but some of it was on the offense and the poor play of Zach Wilson, who never seemed to connect with Elijah Moore, even dating back to last year. So you figure whatever upgrade if Derek Carr goes there, that's great news for Elijah Moore. Like Garrett Wilson, you're expecting at this point to perform with any quarterback, no matter how good or bad. And if it's good, you can probably, at this point, Garrett Wilson looks like that dude where if he has even an average quarterback, he can have a top 10 season. But Elijah Moore is the big beneficiary if they're able to upgrade the Jets at quarterback. Corey Davis might be a cap casualty, but they brought in Ty Conklin, who had a decent year catching the ball last year. They have ancillary options at wide receiver. The Jets do. Maybe they cut Corey Davis and draft one in the second or third round. That wouldn't be great for Elijah Moore, but it would make sense if they do acquire Derek Carr and just try to load up on offense. And then, of course, you've got Breece Hall. So that's, you have that from that perspective for Derek Carr. I personally, the winner would be the Jets in my mind from a fantasy perspective. The ideal scenario is the Jets. You're already drafting Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver 1. You're potentially drafting Elijah Moore, maybe as a certainly as you got to be able to draft him as an upside wide receiver 3 at this point, at least. What's his ADP actually? I'm going to look that up. Let me see what Elijah Moore's redraft ADP is. Wow, 123. So you can have Elijah Moore in 2023 redraft in the 10th round. And if they get Derek Carr, that's going to be a great value. That's going to be a huge value. So, ideal spot for Derek Carr, I would say it's New York. Speaking of New York, the other big offensive weapon that is a free agent out of New York is, of course, Saquon Barkley. Saquon's coming off his most productive season since his rookie season. Played in all 17 games. Looked good bouncing back from injuries that he suffered in. He had the torn ACL in 2020. He missed after week 5. He missed a good amount of time. At week 5 of 2021, he missed a good amount of time. He returned, but he wasn't the same. He wasn't himself. But he was healthy this past year. So, of course, the question is, where does Saquon go? The Giants can certainly tag him. They could do that. That hit would be, I mean, it would be sizable, but again, it's for just one season. Yeah, I'm whatever the cap hit is, then it, now it comes down to, do the Giants want to pay that, knowing that they have to get something done with Daniel Jones. But Saquon is far and away. I mean, now you're talking about a team. They were probably thinking they're in a bit of a transition phase going into last year, but then they ended up going to the playoffs as the 6th seed and winning a game on the road. They're, as far as they're concerned, their timeline to be competitive may, in their minds, have sped up after last year's success, which probably means they would want to run it back with Saquon, who is, again, far and away their most talented playmaker on offense. It wasn't this regime, but the franchise made him the 2nd overall pick in the 2018 draft. You probably have to bring him back if you're the Giants. Again, especially because they're thinking after the success of last year that they can move forward. They can take a step forward in their expectation to compete. You need Saquon for that. So if that is the mindset that the team has, then Saquon's back with New York. Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to see what the franchise tag, what would that cost be for this year? It is there not one that okay, there's not one that it's 10 million, excuse me. It's almost it's 10 million. Franchise tag would cost the Giants, it'd be a $10 million commitment to Saquon Barkley for 1 year. They could do that. They could do that. It's a lot of money, but for a guy like Saquon for just 1 year in his age 26 season, that's probably pretty reasonable. Saquon's not going to like it. Saquon's not going to want it. But they could do that. And see if Saquon's able to string together 2 back-to-back, healthy, completely healthy, if not mostly healthy seasons. He did it this past year after 2 seasons of dealing with injuries. They might be thinking, they have that in the back of their minds. Can he repeat that? Or at least, play at least 14 or 15 of the games at a high level. Well, if he plays, I mean, from the perspective of, can he get through them healthy? Mostly healthy. 14, 15 out of 17 games. That $10 million franchise tag might be worth it. Might be worth it for the Giants. And then, of course, there's his teammate, Daniel Jones, who took some significant steps forward this past season with his new head coach, with Brian Daboll as his head coach. Severely cut back on the turnovers, played smart football, ran the ball well, showed improved accuracy with a less than stellar group of wide receivers to throw the ball to, including a midseason trade of Kadarius Toney. Jones did not have a ton to work with this past season, and he came through. The Giants have to pay him. Jones is probably going to want more money than he's worth. The Giants will probably look to find a deal that's a little bit more team friendly. They probably try to find some way to meet in the middle. Giants give Jones a little extra. Jones maybe takes a bit of he comes back a little bit off of what is probably going to be an initial high asking price, an initial offer. Because I don't know that you can give Daniel Jones 42, 43, 45 million. 35 million? That's a little bit more that's a little bit more manageable for the Giants. Salary cap and potential investment in a guy who, again, showed market improvement last year, but can they win with Daniel Jones? I mean, like, win playoff games, multiple playoff games. Do we want to commit what's probably going to amount to at least 120 million, 130 million over the course of, say, 4 years or so? Do we want to do that with Daniel Jones? And they probably have to. What's their alternative? Derek Carr? That wouldn't make any sense. So you got Jones, you got Jones, you got Barkley. It's hard to envision Saquon walking. I think they have to get it done, the Giants. They have to get a deal done with Daniel Jones. It would be less, because he's the core. It would be less blasphemous, I guess, or less of a crazy thought to see them let Saquon walk. You know, so I think they get it done with Daniel Jones. Saquon, I assume, comes back, but if there was any, if they have for cap purposes and all the factors that come into weighing as far as committing to a quarterback versus running back, when you weigh all those variables in, all those factors, Saquon is the more likely of the two, I would think, to walk. But I think the Giants find a way to bring both of them back. It's kind of quiet in here today, so I'm going to go over one more. I'll go over one more guy, and then if I'll of course keep my eyes and ears pinned if we have anybody jumping in to talk shop on anything. But yeah, keep my eyes peeled on that. What's going on, Rojo? Good to see you, man. No, Gary Brightwell. Hey, man, I just I have a hard time envisioning the Giants moving on from either one of Jones. Jones for certain being the quarterback, but Saquon as well. I would say he's the more likely to walk between the two of them. But I think they bring them both back. I think they bring them both back. Now, Brightwell finished the season well. I know I know I think John did a video about him a while ago, a long time ago. He ended the season strong. He had, what was it, 11 carries, 60 yards in the team's finale against the Eagles on the road, with the Giants just playing a bunch of backups. I mean, it's what, like 5.5 yards a carry? It's pretty good. But yeah, I don't know if we're about to get Gary Brightwell season. In the same way that I'm not sure we get a Zamir White season. I know Zamir White, this leads me, of course, to Josh Jacobs. Zamir White was a very interesting, very enticing name in dynasty circles all last season. Not all last offseason, but once he was drafted and you knew that the Raiders weren't picking up Jacobs' fifth-year option, everybody was looking at Zamir White as the next guy, and it was for good reason. It wasn't crazy to think that the team could move on from Jacobs given their transactions. not picking up his 5th-year option, and then drafting Zamir White in the 4th round. And then what did Jacobs do? He had his far and away his best season of his career and one of the top seasons, at least for fantasy purposes, by a running back. He was the RB3, Jacobs was. I think it was either McCaffrey or Eckler, depending on your scoring, and then I think it was Jacobs. So but the Raiders he's only 25. The Raiders have to bring him back. Why wouldn't they bring him back at this point now, you know? And again, the franchise tag for running backs this year is around $10 million. It's like about $10 million. For both Saquon and Jacobs for just one season, that might be worth it. Again, the franchise tag sucks for the players. They don't get a long-term commitment. They don't get the stability that they want baked into their contract that they hope to get as a free agent. When you get the slap with that franchise tag, you lose all that. So they're not going to like it. So the teams have to, and it's not just them. Players, all players, there's a lot of negative feelings toward the franchise tag by the players. So teams using it have to tread lightly here. So the Giants and the Raiders have to be careful with how they approach this. That being said, for players of that caliber, $10 million for one season, I don't want to stunt for the owners or the team, but it makes sense from a team perspective, I think, for both of those guys. Maybe not like a Miles Sanders, but certainly for a Saquon Barkley and a Josh Jacobs. You know? So again, I'm not making any bold predictions here as like Josh Jacobs is going to sign with the Dolphins. Like that's not I'm not here to play that game. Just that I don't see how this isn't a situation where he had a good but not great season and it's like up in the air that he returns. He had a season to the point where I don't think the Raiders can. They have to bring him back after the year he had, being only 25 years old, having spent a first round pick on him just a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, I guess, at this point, but still only being 25 and having a top 3, top 5, however you want to quantify it, season at the position, they have to bring him back. Might not be good business signing a running back to a long-term deal with a great unknown at quarterback, but if you can get a guy, if the Raiders, let's say the Raiders bottom out this year with oh my gosh, who's their backup? The kid from New England who got some opportunities at the end of the season. Jarrett Stidham. If that, which is, and I guess I don't want to automatically assume that Stidham stinks, but you would probably expect that if Jarrett Stidham is the Raiders quarterback in 2023, they may have a shot at the top pick in 2024. And then if the Raiders can get, let's say they do end up getting Caleb Williams, now you've got exactly what every team dreams of these days. A good young quarterback on a rookie contract, and then it makes sense to load up on big names at other positions, like a Josh Jacobs. So again, that's the game that they could play, the Raiders. And then once you secure your quarterback, then you can go and kind of try to replenish the wide receiver position, because Devontae Adams is officially over 30. And then you still have Jacobs in his age 27 season. They could theoretically, if they play their cards right, make a decent run at competing in 2024. Or it might be more like 2025, but that's probably the way you play it. And then you have Jacobs at age 27, 28. And yeah, that's where you start to get worried about running backs as far as age and workload and all of that stuff. But I mean, not every running back, especially the workhorses, they don't they may be more likely to fall off at 30, but at age 28, you can still involve that player. So yeah, they probably got to bring Jacobs back. I think they do bring Jacobs back. I think like Saquon, this could be a situation where he does get slapped with the franchise tag. 10 million doesn't feel like a whole lot of money. It's a lot of money for a running back. It's a lot of money to pay a running back, but an elite Saquon Barkley at age 26 and elite Josh Jacobs at age 25, where it's just a 1 year commitment, and then the team has the ability to reassess at the end of the 23 season. Like, it makes sense from a team perspective. It sucks for the players, but I think those specific moves, these are situations, rare situations, where it makes sense to slap your 25, 26-year-old running back with the franchise tag. Hopefully they can get more money out of it in the form of a long-term deal, but just feels like it feels like the move that makes the most sense for the team, and of course, that's what the team's going to do. So four of the top 5 free agents, I expect to go back to their teams. Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. There's only one who's definitely going to be changing teams, and that's Derek Carr because the Raiders released him. So again, this isn't like hot take central. I'm kind of the mindset that these top guys end up back with the teams that they were with in 2022. So I guess, yeah, to that point, if either one of them walk, then it might behoove you to dangle in dynasty leagues, dangle Zamir White, dangle Gary Brightwell in a see if you can sneak something out of somebody before the teams replace those guys with new players either in free agency or the draft. But that's getting a little convoluted, and we don't know how that's going to play out. I can do a couple more. I'll do a couple more free agents. No, we got a couple people hanging in here right now. I know it's a bit of a smaller crowd with it being the off season, and John's normal setup when he's usually here, when he's usually with us, is way cooler than mine. Feels like it's a little bit more interactive, but I can do a couple more free agents for today. And I did notice I got there's a new option as far as sharing content on YouTube. They added podcasts as something that we can add to our channel. So that's probably going to be an off-season members only perk, where I can slap some podcasts on the channel. I didn't know that it was an option until today. I feel it's a really new. I mean, I check this stuff. I check I look at YouTube each day just to like see what's going on. But I noticed that podcast option for the first time today. So that'll probably get thrown in as a members perk for the channel throughout the off season. I can slap little 10, 15 minute segments together. Just some thoughts on different things, dynasty related, fantasy related. Good little addition to the offseason for the members. So you could be on. I got to figure out. I don't know if I'll have guests. I'm not 100% sure what my topics will be at that point, but in the near future, we can be on the lookout for that. I guess the other two big names to cover today, or sorry, I'll do the 3. I got to do the 3 on the cover. There's 3 on the cover. I already talked about Saquon Barkley. I talked about Josh Jacobs. I mentioned Miles Sanders. So I can talk about him because the difference between Saquon and Jacobs versus Sanders is I think Sanders walks. Sanders won't be back with the Eagles. I'm sure the Eagles would like to have him back, but the Eagles have a lot of impending free agents that they're going to want to try to retain. Therefore, Sanders feels like the odd man out. He had a good season. He had a really good season. I think he had his first 1,000-yard season. In what turned out to be a great rushing attack. I think one of the top in the league, or top 2 or 3 in the league rushing attack in the Eagles offense. Had a really strong season. Gave way to Kenny Gainwell in the playoffs for the most part. Which was a bit of a strange development. But he had a really strong season behind the Eagles offensive line, which is really good, and the Eagles rushing attack in general, which was one of the best in the league. That being said, the Eagles have lots of free agents that they're going to also want to lock up. Therefore, I think Sanders is the guy who's most likely to walk as far as like the top running backs on the market. Saquon, I think, goes back to the Giants. Jacobs, I think, goes back to the Raiders. Sanders, he moves on. Sanders moves on. The Panthers have a need at running back. The Dolphins probably have some type of a need at running back. The Bills could be in the market for a running back, although they could just bring Devin Singletary back. Depends on who they think is some combination of talent plus cost. Who's the better investment? If the Patriots let Damian Harris walk, they could be a suitor. Sanders would probably make a little bit of sense as a complement to Ramondre Stevenson, because Sanders doesn't offer as much in the passing game, whereas Ramondre does. Yeah, there's several spots that could use a running back. Arizona, depending on what happens with James Conner. Conner had a good season. It's just Sanders is younger. That's all. So I do think Sanders ends up walking. I do think he will have a new home. And he's the first, he's the guy that comes to mind as far as like this time of year, if you're thinking about acquiring a running back, you should probably just not do it. Like, wait for the dust to settle on free agent lands. But hell, this might be kind of right. I don't know that this necessarily happens, but the Chiefs could bring on Miles Sanders. Like, Isaiah Pacheco looks good, but they only spent a 7th round pick to bring Pacheco in. Now, that's probably a little less likely, but you can never rule out what the Rams could bring him in. Well, why would they do that? Cam Akers looked like he came on strong to begin this, or to end the season. Excuse me. They may actually be strapped for cash because they went all in on the Super Bowl last year. The Rams. The Broncos could be an option. There are several landing spots that I think that Sanders could end up in. I do think of the top free agents, especially at the running back position, he's the one who's most likely to go. I don't think the Eagles bring him back. Chuck Man, Crumply Heads, what's going on, guys? Good to see y'all. Thanks for coming in and hanging out. Thoughts on Jimmy G? Well, I feel like the one that I've seen floated around the most is a reunion with Belichick in New England, but I'm not sure that one totally makes sense. Now, the Patriots could move on from Mac Jones. He's still young. He's still on his rookie contract. Depends on how good the team feels about him. There's Carolina. Carolina needs a quarterback. Carolina's needed a quarterback for about 4 or 5 years now. Maybe 4. Carolina needs a quarterback. I don't think this is going to happen, but the Falcons are an option. I think the Falcons are playing for 2024. They're likely playing Desmond Ridder as a rookie this year in year 2 of kind of, I guess, what is like a rebuild. They could go. He could also go, and I feel like this was rumored during the season that if the opportunity was there, like the Seahawks would have swooped in. But they didn't want to, or I think that might have been the trade rumors prior to the season or when he wasn't healthy quite yet. So that's a potential spot if they don't bring Geno Smith back. I assume they might want to bring Geno Smith back on maybe a short-term deal. I don't know what Seattle's going to do. They're kind of in a weird spot, right? Because everybody expected Seattle to be terrible. And then they made the playoffs. And they still don't have a roster that's ready to like compete with the 49ers or the other top team. I'm just talking about the best team in their division. But Seattle's not quite there yet as far as an entire roster. Like, do you bring Geno Smith back? Like, I think they maybe were, I don't know what they were expecting to do as far as coming into the 2022 season, but now they're kind of in this weird spot, right? Like, they're probably going to be projected by a lot of people, maybe not everybody, probably not everybody, but they're going to get projected as a potential playoff team in 2023 if they bring Geno Smith back. But like, I guess, are they good with that? I don't know. I don't know that makes sense for them. But if they feel like they can continue to compete, that could be a spot. Hell, staying in that division, Arizona could be an option if depending on when Kyler Murray's able to return, and Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy was dealing with injuries at the end of the season as well. Like, just there's 2 teams in the division where Jimmy G could end up. I don't think the Rams, right? Because I feel like if Matthew Stafford was going to retire, you know how that was kind of like the questions are, have we seen the last of Matthew Stafford? And we still, I guess that news could still break, but I feel like we have a better inkling of that by now. Anyway, Stafford dealt with injuries to his back throughout the season. I think going into the season, it was an elbow. He was shut down eventually when it was becoming pretty obvious that the Rams season was in the tank. It was around like week 10, 11, or 12, somewhere around there. Stafford got shut down. They brought in Baker Mayfield. Like, that's probably what the Rams want to do or want to work with going into the 23 season. They have Stafford. If he's healthy, he's their guy. If not, they can get a long look at Baker Mayfield if they really want to. I don't know that that's where Jimmy G goes, but Arizona is certainly in the realm of possibilities because Kyler Murray is probably not going to be ready to start the season. And if he's able to come back, let's say he's able to even come back week 5, 6, or 7. Is he going to be the Kyler Murray that we expect out of Kyler Murray? I don't know about that. So that's a possibility. And then there's, he could just end up as a backup somewhere. It could be like a situation that he had coming into this year where he I guess it's, this is probably the most outrageous one, but if the Packers trade Aaron Rodgers, I guess that, they'll start Jordan Love. Um yeah, Jimmy G's options are like Carolina. I've seen New England like that as far as like a reunion thrown around out there. I don't know how likely that is. Maybe somebody if Seattle doesn't want to pay Geno Smith and maybe Jimmy, um, maybe Arizona. Outside of that, it might just be like if there's a backup opportunity somewhere. Tennessee, if they find a way to move on from Tannehill. I don't know. There's a lot of landings. There's plenty of landing spots because he's a quarterback, but I don't know that he's a lock to start. Could go to the Raiders too. Hell, the Raiders the Raiders need to hit the reset button though. Like they don't have Carr now that you get a long look at Stidham because screw it, why not? But like that team is behind. That team is behind the Chiefs and the As fun, the Chargers are the Chargers chargered quote unquote in their playoff game, and it's kind of a reminder of like why does that franchise feel like it's like always shooting itself in the foot? But the Raiders are behind both them and the Chiefs just in their own division, so they should be hitting the reset button. Bringing in Jimmy G would make no sense. And then I guess, wherever Derek Carr doesn't go, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get traded, he could go to the Saints. He could go to the Jets. So could be one. It could be one of those options, I suppose. Could go to New Orleans. I don't. I think Andy Dalton was just on a 1-year deal. Do you? I mean, not that that blocks anybody from doing anything or going anywhere. And they decided to move on from Jameis Winston as well. Uh, the fact that he didn't play when healthy during the season kind of told us that. So the Saints are an option if they feel like they could compete with Jimmy G. Um, like honestly, first team in the NFC South to get a quarterback wins, I guess. So yeah, and AJ, what's going on, AJ? Tampa Bay as well as an option. Yeah, the Bucks obviously need a quarterback. Assuming Brady's not playing us this time around with the retirement, which I don't think he is. And even if he was, he's not coming back to Tampa. So that's also a possibility. Yeah, I mean, honestly, first team to a quarterback in the NFC South gets a prize. The issue with Tampa is I think it became obvious in that playoff game against the Cowboys. Like they probably need to hit the reset button. The Bucks. They have good wide receivers. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They have an aging Leonard Fournette. They have an interesting guy in Rachaad White who probably is not going to get a workhorse role. They're going to need to add another running back if they move on from Lenny. But the offensive line play fell off this year, and there were injuries, right? Ryan Jensen was hurt most of the year. But they also lost guys in free agency. It wasn't just injuries. And then the defense was just like the secondary was rock solid. Brady's first year in Tampa, but the 2 seasons since then, the play has fallen off significantly. So the defense is not where it used to be either. That team probably needs to hit the reset button. In which case, Jimmy G, from that perspective, like, do you want an aging Jimmy Garoppolo who I guess you're trying to put him on? It's like the San Francisco 49ers. You're trying to put him on a great team and just have a quarterback like not make mistakes. Right? Don't lose us the game. So I guess again in that perspective, the place that makes the place that makes the most sense for any one of these quarterbacks is the Jets. The veteran quarterbacks is the Jets. They've got good weapons, and that defense. I mean, the Jets are the butt of a lot of jokes, and rightfully so. But that defense is solid. The defense is solid. If you put an average quarterback on that team, that team can compete. Yes, they're not as good as the Bills. They're not as good as the Dolphins either, but they have their defense might be better. Their defense might be better. The receivers aren't. The running back is. The quarterbacks, well, yeah, Tua's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But the Jets have a good roster. The Jets have better offensive. I think top to bottom, the Jets have more intriguing skill position guys than, say, like the Bucs. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are better than Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, but Garrett Wilson is like, man, he's ascending. He's not proven in a way that Evans and Godwin are, and but you would have Breece Hall. He's a leg up over both Leonard Fournette and Rachaad White once he's healthy. And the big difference, again, from an NFL perspective, the Jets defense is better than the Bucs defense. From a whole team perspective, I guess that's what I mean. So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts that need to happen about a month from now in free agency. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. You assume there's going to be more trades. The NFL has certainly opened up with the amount of trades that get done each offseason compared to even like 5 or 6 years ago. You can expect, as always, to see lots of movement now, and it's going to be fun. As far as the top 12, the top 12 rookies, I think I have a decent amount of them as far as just like short little videos, snippets, or clips on the channel. I don't know if I've quite gotten to 12 yet. But for Superflex, the top 12 rookies, there's 4 quarterbacks and there's 8 non-quarterbacks. To me, the top rookie, regardless of format, is Bijan, right? That's a foregone conclusion. Bijan Robinson looks like a stud. Looks like he's the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. His highlight tape is outrageous. Whatever situation he steps into, he needs to be cemented as the guy right away. He's the 101. He's the 101 in 1 QB. He's the 101 in Superflex. You would have to be incredibly desperate for a quarterback. The only scenario, and I don't even know if you're doing this, the only scenario, if you have the 101, where you're not taking Bijan, is if you're absolutely loaded at running back. Your quarterback situation is decent, but not great. But you need a guy that could help you potentially get over the top this year. And if you get that quarterback, then maybe you have a chance to compete year one because your running backs are already loaded. Even then, I would still probably just take Bijan. Bijan's the 101. And then it's whatever quarterback goes 101. Or, whether it's Houston or Indianapolis or another team trades up to try to acquire, whether it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Will Levis. You know how these things go, right? You guys, you know how this offseason stuff goes. Hype happens. Players get hyped up. Some players, hypes can sometimes come down. Like, it only takes one team to randomly fall in love with the third guy in the conversation that people always have listed third, right? So whether it's Bryce Young, whether it's CJ Stroud, whether it's Will Levis, that's your, that's your 102, maybe your 103 as well. Again, it depends on needs for your specific team, but it's going to be some combination, most likely of after Bijan, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. Personally, I think I prefer Stroud. Just watching what he did in the college football semifinal against Georgia, who has had NFL talent all over their defense. So I would go Stroud second. I would go Bryce Young third. Bryce Young's really good too. Just depends on, do you care? Do you care that Bryce is a little on the shorter side, the 6 foot side? And we've seen players where that doesn't matter at all. We've seen players where that matters a lot. Depends on your own personal assessment on whether you think Bryce is worthy of being picked over CJ Stroud. So it's Bijan, then some combination of Stroud and Bryce Young. After that, it's most likely Jahmyr Gibbs, the guy who profiles similarly. He's not Alvin Kamara, but profiles similarly to him as far as he's an elite pass catcher out of the backfield. So then there's Gibbs. I would personally then go Jackson Smith-Njigba. And depending on landing spot and draft capital and all that good stuff, there's an argument to be had where Jackson Smith-Njigba goes in the top 4. He's my wide receiver 1 for this year's class. I know that he didn't really do a whole, the injuries last year hampered him, derailed his season before it could ever even get started. But watching him put up over 1,600 receiving yards when he shared wide receiver snaps with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, Smith-Njigba is my wide receiver 1. So I think he goes 4 or 5, and then it goes at Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston, again, depending on draft capital. And it's a combination of 2 things, draft capital and personal preference. Do you like the big-bodied receiver who looks the part as far as he's 6'3" or he's 6'4", and he's got the body, he's got the big body to go line up on the outside every single play? That's Quentin Johnston. Do you want the skinny, fast dude? That's Jordan Addison, who's maybe a little bit more versatile in that you can put him. Johnston could go in the slot, but Addison would probably do it in a vacuum based on college production and all the measurables and intangibles and all that stuff. You would expect Addison to do that at a slightly better level. You expect Quentin Johnston to succeed more as an X receiver. So it's one of those. Those 2 guys are in that like 6-7 range. And then you get into the other quarterbacks. Will Levis, Anthony Richardson will probably go in that 8, 9, 10 range. Again, who gets drafted first? What situation? Levis is probably, at least today, right now, Will Levis is probably around like 7, 8, 9. Anthony Richardson might be a little bit more like 9, 10. So it's not a big difference. All things equal, those 2 are probably in that 8 to 10 range. And somewhere else in that range, I would say, is Zach Charbonnet. The guy who rounds out at least the top 10 for me in Superflex is Charbonnet. Over 1,100 rushing yards over 1,300, 1,100 yards was his sophomore season. in 2022, Charbonnet, 1,359 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, caught the ball 37 times, improved efficiency, improved production in every area from his sophomore to his junior year. I'm excited about Charbonnet's prospects at the NFL level. He's got the size. He's 6'1". He's 220. He's got the pass catching chops. That's going to give him an opportunity to have 3-down potential. There's not too many 3-down running backs in today's NFL, or workhorses, so to speak, in today's NFL. I don't know that Charbonnet eventually ascends to that, but he has the ability maybe to carry that load in a way that, say, like Aaron Jones does it. Runs the ball 15 times and he can catch it 3 or 4 times. Runs the ball 12 or 13 times, can catch it 4 or 5 times. So, Bijan, some combination of Stroud or Young, Gibbs, Smith and Jigba, Addison Johnston, Will Levis is like around 8-ish, and then say maybe Charbonnet around 9, Anthony Richardson around 10. In some way, shape, or form, that's my top 10. I know you asked for top 12. At that point, it could come down to, it's going to come down to ADP. It's going to come down to draft capital and landing spot / opportunity. Kayshon Boutte, if teams believe in his talent, despite kind of, some down seasons after he burst onto the scene as a freshman, and then there were other variables and intangibles that kind of like affected his sophomore and junior seasons. But if you still believe in the talent, it could be Boutte. Depends on where Devon A-Chain goes. He's the dude who's all speed, right? He's got like 4.2 40 speed. Some team could certainly fall in love with that. Dude's a track star. He ran like a 10.1 in the 100. He ran like a 20.2 in the 200 because he ran track for Texas A&M. A-Chain did. The dude's fast as hell. He's fast as hell, man. So a team could fall in love with that, decide to go that way. I don't think the guy who I feel like, and maybe this is a hunch, maybe this is a, again, I try to avoid hot takes and all that type of clickbaity nonsense. I just like to give it to you guys, just straight up, or so to speak. The guy who I'm worried about, who kind of has a decent ADP right now, but I think could eventually fall, is Sean Tucker. I don't know that he's like around the top 12 as far as ADP, and he's certainly got talent. He's got big playability. But man, like the production just like tapered off this past year because he didn't get on the field as much. If I had to guess right now to round out my top 12 crumply heads, it'd probably be a couple of receivers for 2 reasons. One, it's a pass happy league. Therefore, the receivers always get a slight bump in value, and their longevity is just a little bit more of a certain thing over running backs, even running backs in committees. They don't maybe take the long-term wear and tear as quickly as if they were the workhorse. But they still get chewed up and spit out, and wide receivers just generally, they play longer. So I guess to round out my top 12 today for dynasty purposes, it'd be Kayshon Boutte and then probably like a Jalen Hyatt. Depending on landing spot, if teams invest in these guys in the top, say, 50 picks, of the draft, which is something that you're more likely to see with a wide receiver versus a running back. I'll tentatively put those guys to round out my top 12. So, in some order, while this isn't exactly to a T, but somewhat, Bijan Stroud, Bijan Robinson, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith and Jigba. If you need a quarterback, Will Levis. If you could use a wide receiver, then Quentin Johnston or Jordan Addison, and then flip-flop them. Zach Charbonnet, Anthony Richardson, Kayshon Boutte, Jalen Hyatt. Honorable mentions are, I'm intrigued by A-Chain. I like his speed. The tight end from Notre Dame is an honorable mention. He's the top tight end in this class. Michael Mayer. He's the top option in this class. We'll see where he ends up. Teams put a premium on tight ends too for a variety of reasons. So if he's drafted high, he'll be in that. I don't know if he, as far as Dynasty rookie rankings, I don't know that he can ascend past, say, like 11 or above 11 or 12-ish, but he could work his way into that conversation depending on where he gets drafted. For now, I'll put Boutte and Jalen Hyatt to round out the top 12. And there are a decent number. I haven't gotten to the quarterbacks yet, admittedly, but there are some very short clips. Most of my videos on my channel are like 4 minutes in length, somewhere in that range. Real short. Not a ton of time. Just a quick blurb ahead of the pre-draft process, right? The combine, the whole interview process, pro days, all the poking and prodding that gets done to the incoming class, to the 23 prospects, to every year's prospects. Just kind of looking at the lay of the land for them ahead of that. So you can get like 3 or 4 minutes of my thoughts on those on the channel. I still need to incorporate the quarterbacks. I started with the skill positions, and then just kind of kept working there on that through them there. But I can do something on Bryce Young, on CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Hendon Hooker. We'll get those guys as well. And then, real quick, just one more announcement. YouTube launched a new feature, launched a new podcast feature where we can post those on our channel. That's a brand new item. That's pretty cool. That I'm definitely excited about using. That'll be a members only perk throughout the off season. I'll throw some 10 to 15 minute podcasts together or something along those lines. Just thoughts on the landscape, fantasy, dynasty, redraft, anything going on like that's going on or relevant or prevalent. Can provide some feedback for, or I can take some questions for. Again, I'll probably make these members only. That'll be a fun little thing for the off season. I think I'm gonna wrap this up. It's been about 75 minutes or so. It's not that long, but with the off season, of course, the content is a little slower. But I appreciate everybody coming in. I appreciate everybody's engagement. Again, just to recap, went over some of the top free agents: Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders. Talked about those guys a little bit, and then rattled off some way too early top 12 rankings for Superflex. Appreciate the conversation starter, Crumply Heads. Feel like that's now's the time to kind of start assessing what do you do if you're in depending on where you are in the first round of a dynasty rookie draft, how many picks do you have? And if you're not, maybe you're not in the first round, maybe you traded out. Like, who should I be looking at in the second and third rounds? Those profiles are coming out again in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. I think that about does it for this evening, though. I'll timestamp this for anybody checking it late, so that you can get some thoughts, maybe some long-winded thoughts on the first crop, the first batch of free agents that I went over tonight, and could look into the secondary and option Bs and option Cs, so to speak, in the coming weeks. But appreciate it, guys. I'm here every Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern, to come hang out, come talk shop, whatever's on your mind from a fantasy perspective, dynasty, redraft, any other format. Always happy to talk shop. Everybody have a good evening. Everybody have a good weekend. Be on the lookout for more videos this weekend. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.